Okay, next we're to item 4. Is Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones ready to do his monthly budget report?
He is. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones. This is your monthly budget report, or the board's monthly budget report, and also public facing. The Utah State Board of Education remains fiscally solvent and able to meet all of its state fiscal year 2020 obligations and requirements. There's no, with the situation that's going on right now, I feel confident that we'll be able to make it all the way through state fiscal year 20. As you know, particular processes are in place. The legislature's in session to set us on the road to being able to figure out ultimately what the state fiscal year 21 impacts, or what the impacts of the situation are to the state fiscal year 21 budget. So we'll keep you informed as we progress with the legislature along those lines. If there's no questions about the monthly budget report itself, I'll head into the discretionary funds report, Chair.
Let me just ask you one question. Superintendent Coleman and at USDB mentioned some one-time money being sent back to the legislature.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. And if is there someone that can pull up can everybody see the discretionary funds report? Because I'm going to talk to this. So.
Okay. So that's coming up then. All right.
Yes, sir.
Nothing on our monthly.
Yes, sir. I was just going to use the example of your discretionary funds to further elaborate on, what.
Let me see if anyone has any questions just on your monthly budget report. I got the cart before the horse a little bit.
Yeah, there should be a backup document that shows it's the highlighted backup document. There you go. No, it should have been a highlighted one. Okay. Well, here's the situation. So the legislature did sweep any carry forward amount that was not obligated, meaning that there was not a contract or an obligating instrument or device in place. So, for example, your top line, your contingency funds, the $200,000 that you had set aside, that was swept. However, it's going to be returned to us by way of the legislative process today in a Senate bill for state fiscal year 21. As was alluded to or mentioned, I believe it was Superintendent Coleman, it might have been you, Chair Huntsman, but as you all know, the federal government extended the tax filing deadline into July. So Utah code, or the Utah law, is that we match what the filing deadline is of the federal government. Well, what's the so what of that? Well, of course, you all know that Utah is heavily dependent on income tax revenue or to fund public education. So what the legislature's mode is, or most of operation here, is to have swept the carry forward balances that were unobligated or basically available in order to turn around and give us that money back so that we would enter into state fiscal year 21 on a right path as far as the state fiscal year 21 budget goes. So, Chair, does that answer your question about what the process was of the legislature and why they swept the carry forward money? And also, just to reiterate, it is coming back to us, but it's for use for state fiscal year 21. And it's very important, too, that you recognize the earlier statement that I made. I'm confident that we're flying through state fiscal year 20, and the actions of the legislature by sweeping carry forward balances that hadn't quite been unobligated, is a normal process in situations like this. And let me tell you this as well. If board members call, probably more than any of the board members would be the finance committee members, will recall that we ended the state fiscal year 19 with $70 million worth of carry forward balances. Your staff got those carry forward balances down appropriately and allowably to 13 million. So there was only about 13 million that we just quite didn't have. And we're not in the business of spending money just to spend money. So, we had some of these kinds of set asides, like on your discretionary fund report for like contingency funding or the legal contingency that there's not necessarily a contract per se. It's just there for what that word is, contingency. So that was part of the 13 million as well. So we really did a good job of getting our carry forward balances obligated. Still about 13 million is what they ended up sweeping. But again, key point is it's coming back to us by way of the Senate bill that's going to be heard. I mean, obviously, I can't be too presumptive. I'm anticipating the Senate bill will pass today in the legislative session, or if they have to extend it tomorrow to pass. That money is coming back to us. Okay, Chair, does that answer your question? Same with USDB. USDB had about $960,000 swept. That money will come back to them in that same Senate bill for their state fiscal year 21 budget. Does that clarify, Chair Huntsman?
Yes. Yes, it does. I was unaware that it was swept. But in finance, I knew that we worked hard to make sure that we had a vision, mission, purpose, and obligated our funding to the right place. It's like you say, not just to spend money because it's there and somebody might take it, but
right. And yeah, it's appropriate to have contingency funds like you have, Chair, or the board has, but then if there's not a contract in place, of course it's vulnerable. But what's really great about this is that they just focused on what hadn't been obligated. I mean, I've seen situations where they would make us, not they, but where situations where it could mean even going deeper, right? Actually breaking obligations and things like that. So they did a very fair process with the intent ultimately of giving us the money back, as far as keeping the bridge between state fiscal year 20 and into 21 to keep us fiscally agile, if you will, or able to meet 21 obligations. It's a base budget. We'll be limited at first. We'll just have to keep our eyes on the legislative process.
And that process is happening in over the next couple days.
Yeah, and then we anticipate even more, or at least another special session in June, to give them enough time. That would have given by the time they get to June, we'll have enough time to see just how deep the impacts are on revenue, and then they can make the state fiscal year 21 adjustment. So they've appropriated money for state fiscal year 21, but there'll be an adjustment time, likely in June, where they'll convene in a special session to get very specific about what changes to the state fiscal year 21 appropriations need to be made.
So to sum this up, none of our obligated funds are at risk, correct?
They're not swept, right? But as an example, contingency funds like the 200,000 were, because there wasn't an obligating instrument like a contract.
I guess we shouldn't have a contingency fund. Oh, I'm just kidding.
No, that's fine.
But I think with all of this, with them taking it back and then those contingency funds coming back, it's all about what's at risk and our programs at risk and other things. And the answer is no.
Yes, sir.
Through the rest of this school year. Okay. Is there any questions from you? Probably had more to report on the.
Right.
Did you have more to report, Scott?
No, sir. And subject to any questions or concerns, that concludes my report.
Okay. Questions from board members or comments?
There are no hands from board members, but there's a hand up from Sarah Young.
Okay. Sarah?
I'm sorry, I'll take that down. I'm not sure how that happened.
Well, we're glad to hear from you and thank you for your good work you're doing. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Jones.
Yes, sir.